Greetings, everyone. Dr. Brian Scott with you. Another episode, another podcast here, Insight to the End Times. We're looking at Bible verses, and we're also looking at world events. And this week, we primarily have been looking at world events, and primarily in the way people are changing the way they think and changing the way they believe and moving from the standards that we've known for centuries and decades over to new standards which are off the wall for most of us. Now, maybe I'm, revealing my age and my way of thinking, but the Bible's my mainstay, and it has been for thousands and thousands of years, and it will always be. But the majority of our population today in North America particularly, it's under a great attack. Today I want to talk to you and share with you. We've been looking at the changes in our university training. We've been looking at the way people think. We've been looking at the response to Israel's attack on Gaza because of Hamas, and this new way of thinking in oppression and the conflict that arises that lends to the conclusion that you're either the oppressor or the oppressed. These are terms we've never used before, and all of a sudden it's a mess. Amen. It's just a mess. Today I want to talk about some changes in the thinking that has occurred over the years, and that's whether capitalism is good or whether socialism is good. Which one? Is a conflict between them. Capitalism, of course, would be associated with countries that have done extremely well over the years, like Great Britain, like the United States. And these are countries where they rewarded people who worked hard, did things that benefited all the country, the nation, and raised the standard of living. Entrepreneurial businessmen and women, people who worked hard in the American dream to own a home and save and have a nice retirement. That is old-fashioned now because socialism has taken center stage, and socialism would be associated with countries that have been under dictatorial type rule, like Russia has been over the last number of years, Germany in the mid part of last century. This is where you had the government stepping in, and the government knows more than everybody else, and the government's going to set all the standards and all the rules, and you have to agree with that whether you like it or not, And we're seeing some really heavy-duty things occurring in this respect. I would suggest to you that the Bible is based more on capitalism than it is on socialism. And I say that because, just for instance, in Matthew chapter 25, Jesus teaches the parable of the talents. And he talks about a master who goes away and he leaves talents with 3 of his servants. One servant gets 5 talents, another one gets 2 talents, and the third gets 1 talent. A talent was a measure of funds, money, in the days when this was written. In today's time period, a talent would be worth the equivalent of somewhere in the vicinity of about $1.4, $1.5 million. So when the master left the one servant with 5 talents, he gave him something in the vicinity of $7 million to $7.5 million to manage. To fast forward, that servant increases it by 100%. So it goes from 7 to, we'll call it 7 million, it goes to 14 million. The one who had 2 talents, that would have been in the vicinity of 3 million, round figures, it goes to 6 million. Both of them get a commendation. Well done, good and faithful servant. You've been faithful in little, I'll make you a ruler over much. The one who had 1 talent did nothing with his, and it's taken away from him and given to the one who increased the 5 to 10. But the statement made to the one who did nothing is, you're a wicked and slothful and lazy servant. You should have invested the money in the bank, so at least I would have earned interest. So I'm taking away the talent from you and I'm kicking you out. Now, when we transpose that into what does it mean and what's Jesus referring to, he's really referring to himself as the master, the servants as believers. And he's saying, if you increase and do well, I'm going to reward you. And if you do nothing, I won't. So we could expand it this way. He's really putting a stamp of approval on capitalism. You may not agree with me, but that's okay. He's putting a stamp of approval on capitalism. But he's saying if you depend on others to look after you, like the one talent man who did nothing, he is saying, no good, So what have we got going on here? Capitalism thrives in democracy. Socialism thrives in non-democratic locations. So, ready for some statistics? In 2024, the current year we're in, we're going to see 74 nations in the world hold elections to elect new leadership. It's already begun. Taiwan, for instance, just held an election this past weekend. The United States will hold their presidential election in November 2024. So in this time period, from mid-January to the end of November, 74 nations are going to hold elections. This has never occurred in the history of the world that so many nations have elections in the very same year. Now, unfortunately, many of these election procedures will be mockeries of democracy. The results are foregone conclusions. For instance, in 2006, more than 50% of the world's population lived in free democratic nations. Today, 2024, fewer than 25%. It has dropped by 50%. Here's another statement. A Swedish institute with extensive research data concludes that 2023 status is for democracies is worse than it was in the pre-Cold War years of 1980s. That the free rule, democratic rule, is on a decline, massive decline. Here's some more statistics. For the first time since 1990, world police states now outnumber liberal democracies. The number of countries with democratic leadership has been reduced from 44 nations in 2009 to 32 nations today. The dictatorial type leadership, the government oversight, much like you see in Beijing, Moscow, Tehran, that's growing from 22 states 14 years ago to 33 states. So that's like a 50% increase in dictatorial type leadership, lack of a democracy, whereas democracies have declined by about 25%, from 44 down to 32. So what are we seeing here? These are trends. These are massive trends. And these trends are pointing out that freedom is being curtailed and that central government leadership under either an individual or a tight government party is assuming control and setting the stage and the boundaries of life for us. Well, that's exactly what the Antichrist will do when he comes on the scene. So we're seeing the spirit of the Antichrist even in our government leaderships in terms of the numbers, in terms of their philosophy, in terms of their belief system. We can't keep burying our head in the sand and saying, well, that's just the way it is. Well, that is the way it is, but it is symbolic. It's a sign, it's a signal of how close we're getting to the end of the age. It really is significant. I trust I've helped you this week. We've got one more session tomorrow. We're going to shift gears. I don't want you to miss it. I'll see you then. Bye.